listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We're live today. It's December 27th, 2009, the last show of 2009, our post-Christmas episode, which, apart from callers, I don't think we'll mention Christmas again.
Okay.
We're done. We hope everybody's enjoying their holiday season, whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate. We got New Year's around the corner. As I mentioned, this show is live. It's sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road beginning at around 11:30, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. The January lecture will be from Fred Edwards, who's here to represent the Coalition of Reason, the people responsible for billboards all across the country. And the ACA, CFI, a bunch of other groups in the Austin area will be coming together for that particular lecture so we can get to know COR and see if it's a viable option for the secular community in the Austin area. So we're looking forward to that. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information about that program. That's Nonprofits, P-R-O-P-H-E-T-S, and we will be live again for the 2010 season starting on January 16th. That's hosted by Dennis Loubet, features myself, Russell Glasser, Kathleen O'Connor, and on rare occasions, Schilling and Jeff D. and anybody else who happens to drop by, and sometimes we'll get PZ Myers to call in, or we have no idea what's going to happen on any given day, but we'll be back on the 16th. For more information about this program, you can visit the show's official website, www.atheist-experience.com, where on the front page you can always watch the video from the previous week's episode, and there's also an archive link available for you to click to get to the list of archived shows. This show's been on for more than 11 years, and I haven't been on for that long, and we don't have video for every episode. We do have a ton that Don, for the most part, has painstakingly archived and cataloged and put up at Google Video and Blip TV. And in addition, we're streaming the show live every week over Ustream. You can visit the ustream.tv link that I'm sure that they'll put up in a moment. And additionally, the Public Access Studio in Austin has begun streaming, and as we are the premier live audience show around the world, we've been asked to put this show through the paces. So the address is on your screen right now. It's facil.channelaustin.org/streaming/ch16.asx. That is for if you're on Internet Explorer. I think for everybody else it's ch16.htm. But I don't know if that second link's going up there or not. As I mentioned, it's a live show. We take live calls, and we'll have the telephone number up for you shortly, and you're free to call in. We try to reserve, we only have 3 lines available, so we try to reserve space both for people in Austin primarily and for people who disagree, who have a different view about theism or God or whatever they happen to disagree on, so that we can actually have conversations. And in some cases, because we're talking about things that go to people's core beliefs and values, things will occasionally get heated, and there will be, tempers flaring and whatnot. We try to avoid it. I used to make judicious use of the hold button in order to kind of facilitate.
You haven't had to do that much lately.
I haven't, although I got a little free with the drop button last week and hung up on somebody that I shouldn't have, but we'll move on from that. Don today is going to talk about
The
the
argument.
argument from ignorance.
Yes.
And we'll start taking calls after that's over. Briefly, as a reminder, you can also visit the ACA's website, which is www.atheist-community.org. I think I just heard Frank scream, what the heck is he doing? I started the announcements 5 minutes ago, and we tried to get the address up. After this program's over, everybody involved gets together and goes for dinner at Threadgill's, 301 West Riverside Drive. We're on the air till about 6 o'clock, and we'll be down at Threadgill's around 6:30 or so. There are a number of other events throughout the week and months that are sponsored by the ACA, including Atheist Happy Hour on Thursdays at the Dog and Duck, and special events from time to time, including various solstice parties, although we didn't have one this season. The Bat Cruise, which happens every September. We have blood drives and food drives, and lions and tigers and bears.
Oh, my.
Yes. Thank you. I have no more critical announcements to get out of the way, so
Okay.
I will give it to you now.
You hand it over. Okay. Well, it's been a while since I've been on. I ended up skipping because we had a preemption during the holidays, during the Thanksgiving holidays. So I haven't been on since October 18th. Today, I wanted to do an Atheism 101 topic that I like to do every now and then and talk about a logical fallacy called the argument from ignorance. And to back up a little bit, Christianity and most mythology is supported by things like lies, including spin. It's supported by things like logical fallacies, where you're led down a rosy path and you reach the wrong conclusion. And it's supported by emotional manipulation. And I can give examples of all these things, but today let's focus on the logical fallacy and a particular logical fallacy. Now, the religion needs these bogus pillars for support because it doesn't have proper support in the way of facts and objective evidence and sound reasoning, so it needs this stuff. And furthermore, when someone uses lies and logical fallacies or emotional manipulation, they effectively admit that they are promoting crap. They're promoting junk, because if it weren't junk, you wouldn't need to have that stuff. If it were valuable in and of itself, you wouldn't need that. So we'll talk about today, what is the argument from ignorance and how is it used? The argument from ignorance is also similar to the argument from personal incredulity, if you're into philosophy. So what is it? Well, the argument from ignorance, I'm going to read from Wikipedia. The argument from ignorance is also known as the argument ad ignorantium. And it's a logical fallacy which is claimed where a premise is true only because it has not been proven false, or it is false because it has not been proven true. And so how this works is usually the person arguing says, I'm going to cast doubt on the thing that you're trying to promote, therefore the thing that I'm promoting is therefore true, is therefore more likely. And usually this other thing, this second thing, there's no evidence given for it. Usually this is just an emotional or some sort of smokescreen to say, oh, your argument's bad, therefore mine must be good. Also, there's also another little hidden logical fallacy that shows up here, and that is this false dichotomy. That usually there's not just two things on the table. Usually there's a lot of things on the table, and so if one thing has doubt cast on it, that doesn't necessarily mean the next thing in the list is the most likely. It could be something else entirely. So it's kind of a smokescreen to put an opponent on the defensive. So in science, this gap in science, if you have a gap in science, generally people use an argument from ignorance to fill in that gap with whatever they're interested in, like a God. And this is called the God of the gaps argument. So every gap is filled with God. If science doesn't know X, well, God did it. That's the default explanation. So how is it used? Well, I've actually gotten into an argument with a theist who said, well, how can you know God didn't create the universe? You weren't there. I've actually had that argument. So the person is effectively claiming that the atheist, which is me, lacks specific evidence. Therefore, their claim that God exists must be true. Well, there's a bunch of problems with this. Well, first off, the theist wasn't there either, right? So whatever they're saying I don't have, they don't have either, so it's kind of a moot point. Also, they tend to not have evidence for their own side of the equation. They don't provide evidence for God. They're just trying to say, well, you don't know that God doesn't exist, so therefore God must exist. And this gets into the whole idea of burden of proof, right? So the person making a claim that God exists, a positive claim, has the burden of proof to make that claim and to assert it and to provide evidence for that claim. So another mechanism, also in the case of this particular theist, other mechanisms for how the universe might have come to exist aren't even considered. So they're just inserting their own view of how that happened as the default thing. There are other cases where we see God of the gaps, like we've had a caller, a professional theist, call in, and a professional apologist call in and claim that logic was created by God because we couldn't prove otherwise. Or you see it now quite a bit with the study of the mind. This very complex, capable thing of the human mind couldn't possibly have come into existence without there being divine involvement of some sort. Well, creationism and intelligent design are almost completely based on arguments from incredulity and arguments from ignorance. So creationists have traditionally railed against, for example, radiometric dating, because it's consistently pointed to an Earth that is 4.3 billion years old and not the 6 to 10,000 that is supposedly predicted by the Bible. So there's been a big war going on, and this war is pretty much over because they've pretty much lost. There pretty much is no debate here about radiometric dating anymore. But creationists latch onto situations where the method failed, the radiometric dating failed for one reason or another, and they actively, they look for these sorts of situations in the scientific literature, and then they grabbed onto them as evidence, supposed evidence for the failure of radiometric dating, but they completely ignored the situations where science was able to explain why those failures existed, such as like a contaminated sample. So this is a very much kind of an active way of arguing, is to go shoot holes in your enemy, whether they're really holes or not. So their hope was to cast doubt on radiometric dating so that their theory of a young Earth would win, and no other explanations at all were ever considered. So today there's no real Christian consensus on the age of the universe. Some people buy into the scientific side of the dating of the universe and the Earth, and some people still cling to this 6,000 to 10,000 years, and there's a whole spectrum in between. Now, as another example, every few years the radiometric dating of the Shroud of Turin is supposedly brought into question with new evidence. And this radiometric dating was done in 1988, and pretty much every year there's a new, caveat, a new hole supposedly punched in this Shroud of Turin thing. The Shroud of Turin is a 15th century forgery. It's been pretty conclusively proven that, but believers want to believe it has something to do with Christ's death, the death of Jesus. The goal is to keep the myth alive. Another place where they cast doubt is transitional fossils. They say, oh, there's no transitional fossils, and that's just patently false. I should have brought one in. I actually own one. It's a monovalve, single-valved snail turning into a bivalve. So it's a snail with a door, and it's pretty cool little fossil. They're called popularly devil's toenails. If you want to go look that up. I have a Creationist Research Quarterly here. I have an article.
Just a quick note for the guys in the booth. We're hearing ourselves now. Don't know what you changed.
Yep, we're getting some feedback. So I have a supposedly scholarly article from the journal called the Creation Research Society Quarterly. And I'm going from the article is called Mutation and Natural Selection, the Central Dogma of Neo-Darwinian Evolution, by Pierre A. Larson. I'm going to read you the abstract, and you got it fixed, Frank. The abstract says, the central dogma of Neo-Darwinism is mutations provide variety that is selected by natural selection. Mutations and natural selection are ultimately the only driving force of evolution, but they are effective only if one or more mutations prove beneficial to an organism in a given environment. In evolution, natural selection can do nothing without mutations. Since macromutations are virtually all near neutral or harmful, micromutations are the only means by which new species can possibly evolve. So far, so good. Kind of okay. The probability that micromutations will lead to new species is so low as to be close to zero. One reason is that the net deterioration of the genome that occurs as a result of mutations, especially near-neutral mutations, which selection and medical advances cannot counteract. Furthermore, non-random mutations are controlled by a built-in cellular process and therefore cannot be the cause of evolution. Now pay attention to the last couple sentences. A large number of studies clearly show that the central dogma has failed, and therefore this devastates the credibility of neo-Darwinism. Furthermore, the increasing knowledge of the immense complexity of life at the molecular level has buttressed both the creation and intelligent design movements. So here's a supposedly scholarly, it's a pseudoscience article on creationism that is basically arguing, it's providing an argument from ignorance. It's saying, well, we're going to cast doubt over here, therefore our little pet theory is true, and it turns out the evidence they provide for their theory is kind of a straw man. It's kind of not. So you see this over and over again in the ID movement, intelligent design movement. So there's no evidence provided for a divine creation. They just want to cast doubt on Darwin one way or another, because Darwin's kind of become the enemy. And they provide a mechanism of irreducible complexity that has been discredited. So this is something that's been going on the last 10, 15, 20 years. Now, note that the intelligent design movement, which is closely tied to the creationist movement, is really a conscious propaganda campaign run largely by the Discovery Institute and funded by a large number of Christian organizations. And what other propaganda campaigns have we seen? What other organizations have we seen with other hidden agendas? Well, the smoking, right? The whole smoking thing where the link of smoking to cancer has been the tobacco companies have tried to hide that for many, many years. They funded pseudoscience that was obscuring this link, and they created for funding people to create a conflict of interest to make sure that their viewpoint. And they basically created a campaign to confuse people, a disinformation campaign. And so you can see that the disinformation is really part and parcel of the argument from ignorance, right? You can actually create the disinformation that creates this ignorance that you're basing your supposed argument on. So you can have this work for you. In global warming, we see the same sort of thing going on. We see the same sort of disinformation campaigns going on, and any small controversy raised it is held up as completely defeating the scientific evidence that we have a lot more CO2 in the atmosphere, and that the ice caps are melting, and that temperature measurements globally are increasing. So you also see a confusion between point data and global trends. So people will say, oh, well, it's cold outside today, there can't possibly be global warming. Well, global warming is about the average temperature on the Earth, the whole Earth for, say, a whole year. And it's a statistical misinference, right? You can't say anything about the mean given one data point. Let's see. And I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Yeah, we covered quite a few different logical fallacies, and it's because in many cases it's difficult to identify the true underlying fallacy. As you pointed out, false dichotomy comes in quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So whereas not necessarily every one of those fits the model of a true argument from ignorance, which is this is true because you can't prove it false, mm-hmm. They do get kind of interrelated, and it's one of the reasons why people have so many problems identifying fallacious arguments is because it's often not easy to pick out which fallacy actually applies. I mean, we've been wrong about it before on the show and in conversation. We've been wrong about tons of things on the show before. And yeah, I know some creationist out there just started giggling. But you're welcome to call in. as are the people who are waiting on
Yeah,
the
we
phone
have
line.
callers, so let's go ahead
Quick
and
note
hit 'em.
before we start taking calls. If you don't get through on the phone today, or you didn't want to get through, or you didn't get enough time on the phone or whatever, you can email us at tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, the co-host, many of the people behind the scenes. We can't promise to respond to all of them. We do read all of them, and we respond to most of them, or a great many of them. I managed to, over the holiday
Matt
time
responds to them all
period.
personally. Poor Matt.
Over the holiday period, I did manage to get my inbox down to about, I think there's about 17 or 18 that were in there before the show. So,
Okay.
if you wrote and hadn't got a response yet, there's a good chance yours may be among those 18. And if not, it might have been eaten by the spam filter. And that's why I want to remind everybody that when you do email, in the subject line, if you include AETV or NPR anywhere in the subject line, at the beginning, at the end, both. Do both if you want to be safe. That's the only way that it's going to guarantee to get through my spam filters. Now, it may get eaten by somebody else's, but that will definitely get through my spam filters. So, we've got Tom from New Haven. How are you?
Yes, sir. Hey, it's
You've
great
been
to talk
you've been
to
waiting
you guys.
patiently, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I've been listening. That was a great piece of work on Don's part there. Let me tell you, Charles Darwin's ship was not the Beagle; it was actually the Basset. Ooh. I have a question that I want to throw out to the audience and you guys, particularly you guys, concerning the cult-driven state of addiction therapy in this country today.
Yep.
It's state-sponsored. It's in some cases, in many cases, you don't have a choice. You have to go through this faith-based Christianity-driven cult, and
Which is AA, right?
yes,
You can actually fight that. It has been fought many times because there are secular alternatives. The biggest problem is making people aware of the secular alternatives, including the justice system. So, we got to do a better job of getting the word out that.
Well, and it's tough for people who are maybe appearing before a judge, having kind of their life in ruins, fighting for their rights to say, well, I don't really want a religious healing process, right? So it's hard for those folks to fight for that, but a few folks do, and there are organizations that are alternatives. I can think of secular sobriety is one.
Yeah, what we need are outspoken advocates and particularly legislators to introduce legislation that it should be a requirement for any judge or court that is ordering any sort of treatment, that they must provide secular options, that they cannot mandate that someone go to a religious treatment facility.
mandate was the word I was trying to remember.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe many people are confused in the audience is why this AA, this Alcoholics Anonymous, we're talking about it as being a Christian-based thing or whatever. Can you maybe tell us why you think that it is, just so that we can fill in that gap?
Well, I've had some experience with friends that have gone through this or attempted to, and wound up miserably flat. The numbers aren't there. There's no data. There is absolutely no reason to buy into this thing, and it's unconstitutional as far as I'm concerned.
Because they promote belief in a higher power, right?
Oh yeah,
So that flies in the face of church-state separation, right?
Big time.
Okay.
And we've actually spent some time on this show and on nonprofits covering AA. As a matter of fact, I had a couple extended rants about the 12-step programs and those which, the absurdity of saying, oh, I'm this helpless creature who depends upon a higher power, and making these people, turning these people into bigger victims than they were beforehand. And it may help them in the sense that they are no longer addicted to or partaking in the usage of an addictive substance, but they didn't help the person on the whole. What
Yeah,
they did,
my
they created a
armchair
victim.
impression of it is it's this kind of a substitute addiction.
Yeah.
And it's disempowering in that you're sort of saying you're useless and you need this other thing to cling to, when a lot of pretty much everybody who gets through this does so on their own.
So what have we
they
got?
can pat themselves on the back for doing that.
So what have we got, guys? We've got a group of people that come together that are all addicts and are giving each other advice. So where does that?
Well, I don't want
If you
to.
graduate, you leave, right?
I don't have an objection. I don't have an objection to that. I don't have any objection to that at all. I think that is one of many valid approaches. I mean, somebody who having been there before and made it through is often a good source of information. So that's not my objection at all. And I think most of the sort of secular sobriety approaches would have something different, would have something similar. Now, you may have clinically trained professionals to deal with substance abuse and addiction that may never have been addicted themselves, running different programs. But the interaction, the social interaction of having another addict, somebody who's been where you are and made it out, can be incredibly helpful. My objection to AA is this
Substitute dependence, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and one new addiction and one that I consider to be particularly nefarious in that they're not only substituting an addiction, but they're also making these people to be helpless victims and relying on an invisible friend. Now, granted, AA isn't specifically Christian, and they go out of their way to say that, oh, no, God and the higher power can be anything that you want it to be. Okay, can it be this pen?
How about a bottle of scotch?
Yeah, how about a bottle of Jack? That's my high power. They've washed it down to the point where it's almost meaningless, and yet the encouragement to maintain this kind of religious devotion to religious ideals persists. And I think if you go through the archive, you'll probably find a couple of shows that we did on AA.
We've touched on it a number of times, but we haven't done a full show on it.
Okay, well, if you do, I'd like to be on the panel there.
All right.
I also think Tracy is groovy, by the way.
We love Tracy.
Tracy is groovy.
Let me throw in one more thing, and we'll get off the phone so somebody else can yak.
Thanks.
I want to mention Ken Miller and his work in Dover. And my question, again, I'll throw something out. It's not a question necessarily, but haven't the people that look at choosing textbooks in Texas ever heard of Dover versus Kitzmiller?
I'm sure that I know they've heard of it.
Yeah.
I know they've heard of it because they commented on it. They just don't happen to agree with it. By and large, though, we're not in bad shape on evolution, thanks in part to great watchdog organizations like the Texas Freedom Network. And I'll let you go, Tom, so we can clear the line. Thanks a lot.
All right.
But the next big battle is going to be on health education. We have a new series, new elections coming up in 2010 to elect the new members of the State Board of Education, and health curriculum is on the agenda. Some information from TFN that I've repeated over and over, and I can't say often enough. If this doesn't shock you, there's something wrong with you, or, because I know about it and it still shocks me. And that is that the word condom appears one time in less than 1% of the textbooks in use in Texas public schools. That's it. And by and large, there's no discussion about anything other than abstinence. Right down to, Kathy made the joke when she came to talk to us about, they recommend that in order to avoid the sexual urges, they should just sleep.
Get plenty of rest.
Yeah, get plenty of rest.
Don't drink.
Close your eyes and stop thinking about it, and your arousal will go away.
The sex ed textbooks arrived. DOA is at the. They were screwed up, right? Because, the textbook manufacturers, they want to sell textbooks, and so they more or less read into what they thought the board would accept, and these particular ones were very, very damaged by the time they got there, and they really couldn't be saved. with regard to evolution, it was the other way around. They had pretty decent textbooks, and the battle was to keep them as they were. So the next battle, I'm not sure what the next battle will be, but it's an ongoing thing here in Texas.
Yeah, we went from science education to ridiculous stuff about social studies, which was just flatly, clearly racist. There was, there were you're including too many minorities in your history books. Okay. Damn, I wish they hadn't done all that good stuff we need to talk about. How dare those dirty Mexicans do something worth talking about? I mean, that's really the kind of level that they stoop to in some of this. And now health curriculum's next. So it's an ongoing fight for, I don't know, reality, which is very frustrating.
We're trying to help out.
So we got John from New York. How are you?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
You're on the air. What do you got?
Oh, cool. I've been trying to get on for probably around 5 months now, and
Oh,
a lot
gee.
of problems happened with Skype and stuff.
Well, the Skype is hard because we had a lot of callers, and here we got a queue of 3, and they're always full, and if you get on, you're on.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I emailed Matt, and I got a response back about something I did in school, which was me and my friend had this idea that we took an index card and we just put atheist on it and just taped it to our shirt and just wore it around all day. See what kind of like responses we would get.
Okay.
And like, it was weird because I thought of myself as like comfortable with my atheism, but when it actually came time to do it, I was like frightened as to like what people would say and stuff.
Yeah.
It was strange because as soon as I put it on, I actually had to walk through the halls and stuff. Just everybody was looking at me, but I got through it, and now I'm like completely comfortable with it.
Well, what kind of responses did you get?
Actually, my first class that day, my teacher said, my health teacher actually, just talking about that with textbooks and stuff, but he said, you're an atheist today? And I said, no, not just today. And I was trying to be completely passive about it. And I said, oh, so you're just an atheist? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I'm sorry. And I'm, okay. And
Are you sorry today, or are you sorry all the time?
yeah.
So your teacher said he was sorry or she was sorry?
Yeah, he said that he was sorry, and then he goes, I just asked why, because I was curious, and he goes, because I prefer you to be saved, and then what I wanted to say, I wanted to say, okay, well, saved by who, which God, you know?
Yeah.
If he anyone.
It's very hard. It takes a lot of practice to get where you can kind of have these sorts of dialogues and think on your feet and answer these questions and think of these things to say. I'm always in situations like this where I'm kicking myself for half an hour later because I wish I had said X, Y, Z, and I thought of this great snappy thing to say, but I thought of it way too late for the conversation. So it takes practice. So
sometimes there's multiple ways to like attack the situation, and you're just trying to find out the best one that'll work for this particular person. And
well, yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I consider myself still learning how to interact with folks and get my point across and hopefully convince a few people, although that's an uphill battle a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
A couple things, congratulations for putting yourself out there. That's a big thing to do, and I can't help but be reminded of the parallels with the gay rights movement and the leader Harvey Milk, who said come out, and there's actually a coming out day on the 11th of October, I think, for gay people to come out, and you've sort of done the same thing, is that like gays, atheists are an invisible minority. Unless they sort of let people know that they're atheists, then people don't know, and these reactions never come out.
yeah,
So,
actually, my high school has it's called GSA. It's the Gay Straight Alliance, and they do this thing. It's for the Day of Silence, where they sign a waiver and they stay silent the entire day, and then they do like a breaking of the silence ceremony, promoting like like not being in the closet for homosexuals and transgender.
Yeah, so it's a similar point of view, right? If people don't know who you are or what your viewpoint is, then they're going to sort of go off on their own direction. They're going to make up their own conclusions about what atheists are, and there's a lot of that.
Had absolutely no like comprehension for what the word even meant, and then like I got things like, isn't it a religion? And like I didn't even like want to go there, and because that's just like round one. But I did anyway, just to make them more aware of what it actually is, so their misconceptions don't just further grow, you know.
Yeah. Well, we actually have somebody in the audience here who went to a public event here in Austin and was chatting people up on via microphone and asking, you know, what does atheism mean to you? And we got some very interesting responses that people, you know, thought it meant you were in league with the devil or whatever, all sorts of crazy stuff. And unless you're sort of just an average normal person out there with this label on you, like you did, people won't know any better. And so it's an educational opportunity that you've given people.
Yeah, but by and large,
sorry, go ahead.
by and large, the issue with hatred and bigotry as it applies to like civil rights, I'm a 40-year-old white male. If it weren't for the fact that I publicly talked about my atheism, my rights aren't in danger of being abused at all. I'm not black, I'm not female, I'm not a member of any minority that you can visibly see. I'm not gay, or at least if I were gay, I haven't done anything to reflect that. So being gay and being an atheist are two of the hidden minority classes. And so if I never told anybody, I mean, I could have pretended for the rest of my life and done a pretty good job of it, you know? Oh yeah, I believe, you know, praise Jesus.
Pass,
You know, isn't it wonderful what God's done for us today? Isn't it? I mean, I just get up every morning feeling so just in awe of God's wonderful power and how much he loves us. I could have done that for the rest of my life, except that I don't want to be a lying hypocrite. I am what I am, and I figured out fairly quickly that I prefer to be me and take the consequences, whatever they are. And so, or maybe I'm just a masochist who really just wanted to be oppressed and vilified. So I adopted that label. Who knows? But it is very hard for people to vilify somebody that they know and care about.
Personally, right.
You know, you hear about, particularly with regard to gays coming out to their parents, some of them are kicked out of their house, ostracized from their family, and yet others have parents who they suspect might do that, and yet what happens is the parents' minds are changed.
Yeah.
Because it is difficult to reconcile your perception with someone in this category with the actual events of knowing someone in this category. This is your child who you know and love. Clearly, they're not an evil baby-killing, child-molesting, whatever other stereotype and fear-mongering you want to put on it. They just believe something is different than you, or they are different from you with regard to, you know, their sexual preferences and stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm actually really, I consider myself lucky to have parents who really just, it didn't bother them at all because it started relatively young when I was like in 8th grade. I was like, well, if I believe in God, then I should read the Bible. And like from the first page and all the like crazy things in Genesis, I was questioning everything.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't sure about stuff, and then I was looking up like agnosticism, and then I'm like, I think I'm an agnostic. And then later I was just like, no, I'm an atheist. And then I went back and forth because I was afraid of like hell and stuff. But the best part about the experiment with people who were good friends with me and they liked me and everything, and as soon as they saw the thing, their jaws sort of dropped, and then you could see that they were kind of like struggling with this. They're like, I know I liked this before, but so clearly the atheism has not affected him in any way, so I wouldn't like him.
Well, you may lose some friendships over something like that. So that's a possibility.
One, but she would post like lots of messages through Facebook, and I would respond in these incredibly detailed and lengthy responses, and she wouldn't address a single thing I said.
My gosh, you sound like me.
Yeah, this sounds so familiar.
Yeah. I tell you this, one of the things that I came to terms with really quickly when I finally just had outed myself to everybody, and I say this over and over again, if you're going to do it, you have to be prepared to lose every family member and every friend. Now, it's probably not going to happen, but you have to be comfortable with that. And in my case, I was, because I figured anybody who stopped caring about me because I no longer believed the same things that they believed, they had a perception of love and friendship and family that was not only foreign to me, but that I didn't want to have anything to do with. And so those people who said, oh, no, I don't want anything to do with Matt anymore, well, thanks. Thanks for letting me know what kind of person you are, because I'd rather not waste time being friends with somebody of that sort of character. I'd rather build new friends. I've built, many great relationships within the atheist community that have
Well, Matt,
made
you're
my
a
life
rock
much
star
better.
now.
Wow.
That won't happen to everybody.
Yeah.
I've actually converted several people from my school, and I noticed like a couple of times you guys said that a lot of the times the people who get like deconverted are not the ones you're arguing, but the bystanders. And
Yes.
like on the bus and stuff, like people, like kids on my bus will come up to me and they're like, I don't believe in God anymore, and I'm like, why? And I'm like, congratulations, and they ask why, and then they just said, because what you were saying, it just made sense. That I've heard that more than anything else, I think.
Well, excellent.
But it's not a lot to build off from, but I think it's a start. I mean, I've heard that at least 6 times from people.
And when you graduate, move to Austin, and you can come down, because some of us are going to get too old to do the show at some point.
Or start your own show in New York there.
Yeah, an even better idea.
Well, that's about all I had to say. So
Great.
and
go
just one
ahead.
more thing. I just want to say, like, I listen to you guys like all the time. I have like 27 podcasts of this show, and then like the same amount for the nonprofits, which is a wicked good show. And if you guys don't listen to it, like all the listeners, I suggest getting a subscription to it.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, John.
thanks
And
for-
listen to other people too, for fear that you might become brainwashed
Right.
to the atheist cult of Austin. But thanks a lot, and we really appreciate what you're doing and for calling in and telling us about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Well, that warms my heart.
Yeah, it's and we get emails like that a lot from people, and I'm always encouraged by more and more young people in particular. Before the show started, we had somebody call in to ask, do we think that atheism is going to be a minority forever? And my answer has always been no. Now, is it going to be an overwhelming majority? I don't know. I happen to see that the trend is inevitably towards becoming an increasingly large minority, and I'd like to stay optimistic and positive that because we're talking about a position that's based on evidence and reason and reality, that I'm optimistic that at some point in the future, probably long after I'm dead, the majority of the people will actually embrace reality and say, no, I don't believe these various myths and superstitions. And that most of those people would say, and if there was evidence to support them, I'd accept that. If there's evidence for a God, I'd believe in a God.
Bring it out. Trot it out. Yeah, let's hear it.
The people who believe in a God, who think that he cares about everybody and wants them to know, and could provide verifiable scientific evidence of his existence, but doesn't believe in a God, which is, to me, incomprehensible. It's logically contradictory. If you were in God's position and you loved everybody and wanted them to know you existed, and you were capable of providing scientific evidence to confirm your existence, why wouldn't you? And the fact that you haven't, I mean, doesn't that tell us a lot about whether or not claims about you are believable?
Or the great God of Peekaboo.
Yeah. We got Scott from Missouri. How are you?
Hey guys, I'm getting that echo.
Are you on a cell phone?
No, I'm on a landline.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Yep,
Well,
I'll
try to grin and bear it.
There goes my
Let's go
fear.
through it.
Yeah, I'll try to get through it. Just wanted to let you guys know I really appreciate what you do, and I think you guys are on the cutting edge of the atheist movement. I
Okay.
just wanted to get that out of the way right away. But
Great, thanks.
Anyway, what I want to talk about was a response that I have come up with to a particular argument that a lot of theists have, that I actually heard you guys mention before, that there's not a whole lot we can do to disclaim it or anything. It's the personal experience argument that theists come up with and say they have these personal experiences where they get a fuzzy feeling at certain times or during a song or whatever. And I just wanted to throw it out there and see what you guys thought. Maybe it would help somebody else out in this situation, or you guys can critique it. Let me know what you think.
Okay.
So how it goes is I asked them if they had ever seen footage of teenagers who are witnessing like Elvis Presley or Michael Jackson or somebody like that, how they're just emotionally overwhelmed to the point where they some of them pass out, and it's just obvious that they're just having this overwhelming feeling. And then I asked them, I say, how do you think, how convincing would that be to them if they had been raised and told to believe that this person is a god? And I say that's what I feel is going on with you when you're having this fuzzy feeling. So I didn't explain that very well, but hopefully you get the point. Kind of nervous about being on the show and all, but do you understand what I'm saying? Do you think that's a good response?
Well, it's not a bad one. I think that what you're doing is you're sort of bringing out the fact that our minds are not an accurate reflection. Don't give us an accurate reflection of the world at large. It's fallible. We have altered mental states. We have drugs. We have heightened emotions that can change how we perceive things, and we have brain farts.
Right.
And coming up with examples where in examples that are sort of not charged, not religiously charged, like you did with Elvis or whatever, is a fine example. I think that's a fine way to approach it. And there's actually quite a bit of research, and if you're really sort of interested in this question, you might delve into some of the cognitive science and how the brain works, and get a better handle on that. And you can actually, it's not too hard to find solid references to these sorts of things, these phenomena, and point out that these things are more likely, naturally occurring, problems or brain states that we have. So I think you're doing okay. Matt,
I appreciate
did you want to add to it?
I think that the argument from personal experience is a tough one. I think probably yours is one of many approaches. I don't think that it's going to be particularly convincing for lots of reasons that don't have anything to do with your approach, but more about the individual. As somebody who was a Christian, if you would have said, do you think that the people watching Elvis could view him as a god because of the experiences that they're feeling, my answer would have been very simple. Sure, but they'd be wrong, and their experience is demonstrably different from my own, and it is evident that, of course, Elvis is not a god. When I talk about the argument from personal experience from people, it's not something simple like a fuzzy feeling or a feeling of ecstasy, because I think these things do have good scientific responses. As a matter of fact, it's something that I've talked about a number of times, and it was one of the things that I kind of clung to, and it was a significant moment of revelation when I realized that some of the tingling, kind of hair-raising experiences that I might have that I would have previously attributed to the Holy Spirit, I had during secular experiences of listening to music or seeing movies, and it becomes clear that this is just, something has triggered an emotional response in the brain that you're not necessarily consciously aware of, and you've then attributed something to it, and that is the fallacy, and the fallacy that you're identifying. When I deal with somebody's claims of personal experience and saying that we can't address those, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the caller from last week who claims that she audibly heard God, or the person who has this claim of, I've had so many direct experiences with a God that are irrefutable. I can't possibly speak to those. They're not my experiences. I cannot say that you had this experience and it's similar to this, therefore yours is false. The best I could do is say that you had this experience and there are similar experiences with other explanations. Therefore, I'm not justified in accepting the explanation you give. I'm not justified in accepting that this is attributed to God in your case. And the second kind of point on that is, couldn't God provide some evidence that was a little less ambiguous?
Or that applied to me.
Yeah.
Right?
And what makes you so special that God will reveal himself to you, and yet he wouldn't reveal himself to other people? Yet you seem to think that he cares enough about us that you want to preach your personal revelation to us. It's really easy. If there is a God, it's particularly the God that many Christians believe in, if this God exists, then he knows exactly what it would take to convince me, is capable of doing exactly what it would take to convince me, and yet refuses to do this at all costs, even at a time when I was a serious believer asking for this, not to mention the fact that now that I'm no longer a believer. To me, that is strong evidence of the non-existence of this God. It may be that a God exists, but what these people believe about him, that he cares about me, for example, and wants me to know him and love him, that is clearly false. That is as
So
cast false as
doubts
anything else.
on the nature of the God, right?
And if their understanding of the God is wrong on that area, then what justification do we have to think it's right on any area? It's one of the reasons why I'm not just an atheist. I'm an anti-theist. I am a strong atheist. I believe that there are no gods. But
Right. Well, yeah, I appreciate the response.
great. Thanks a lot for calling, Scott. Appreciate it.
Hey, one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, you've got to find a way to do this for a living. Okay? write a book or get a radio show, and a lot of us would really appreciate that.
Well, thanks.
You do a good
I appreciate that, and I'm not opposed to the idea, especially given my kind of history with real jobs over the last 10 years. I'm not the slightest bit opposed to that. But I appreciate it, Scott. Thanks a lot.
I'll get off the phone. Thanks, guys.
We've got Jason from Illinois.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Doing okay, thanks. I guess I want to say, you probably don't remember, but last time I called in, just maybe for some of the YouTubers, I was put on hold, and I think you thought I hung up, but I think there was some kind of technical thing where I lost connection, but I didn't hang up on you. You probably don't even remember, but I just want to get that out of there.
Okay.
And then to the last caller, I was going to say, yeah, it's tough for a specific God unless there's like a really close revelation, but I guess all I would say that is like with practice, there's different shamanic stuff that might lead you to spiritual answers, but I'll tell you what, it gives you more questions than answers most of the time. But I don't really want to stick with that too much, but I wanted to talk about a few things if I can, try and make them quick. The first thing is like the first cause argument. And to me, the thing about that is that it kind of gets to the point where like you can't really make sense of it logically. Like this whole, like a lot of mystics will say that consciousness just always was, because basically with evolution, it's kind of like you go to progressively non-complex beings, but it almost seems like you would keep going back and back into this like infinite regression until you get to nothingness, where there's like nothing there, basically.
So you're going backwards in time, you mean? Going backwards in time,
like
things are simpler?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Like it just gets simpler and simpler as you go back in time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, kind of gets to the point where you get to like the Big Bang, and then we don't really have the answer. Okay, well, what came before that? It's almost like it was a sort of nothingness. And that's where like these mystics will say, well, that, consciousness preceded
right, it's a God of the gaps, right? It's an area of science where we don't have knowledge right now. We're researching it, or scientists are researching it, and so the mystics, the religious promoters are quick to fill it in with whatever their explanation is. So that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think I don't know the God of the gaps, where they make that gap where then you have all these attributes of kind of like dogmas and so on and so forth, and I can't really make that connection, but I can kind of see, I guess, where they say this consciousness preceded, but I don't know how it has. It almost like an egoless, consciousness or something like that. And it's just to me like also you can go backwards. Then you could also go like, okay, well, what's beyond space? It's like you keep going, and then it's almost like there's this nothingness.
We don't know of any consciousnesses. I don't know what the plural consciousness is. We don't know of any of those that aren't supported by brains, which are supported by matter, right? Which are ultimately matter. We don't know any of them. So it's a special pleading, is what you're getting. Is they're just creating this magical, unexplained thing, which is consciousness. They may not even know what they're talking about at this point, and they're putting it at the head of this thing in order to try to create an explanation. It just seems like, I've heard these sorts of things too, and I've never heard any sort of argument that has any sort of evidence behind it, right? It's just all speculation ultimately.
Right, and I agree with you there. I guess kind of the reason it almost happens is like because the mind, it seems like, at least to me, like it's like I can't make sense of, it's like almost like an illogical concept, you know what I mean? That really just, there's no beginning to existence because like, say it was nothing, it's like it would have no linear beginning. It would just keep going back, and then, if you can go the other way, the outside of space, it's like just nothingness and goes on forever or whatever. I mean, like forever is like an illogical concept, but that's kind of all you can really come up with,
Well, we just don't know. So we have to withhold judgment until the evidence is in.
And I guess that's why, like, back in the day, they came up with all these different gods and so forth, and it's just like it was basically just their way of filling in gaps, kind of thing.
Right. It was kind of just so stories about how certain things happened. Well, this lightning bolt came down. Oh, the gods must be angry.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah.
they must be having a fight, or old Zeus was out after some young maiden, and Hera got mad, and yeah.
Right.
But the big kind of seriously puzzling questions that you're addressing. What's beyond space?
Yeah.
Who says there is anything beyond space? Well, why isn't space infinite? Now, I mean, of course, there's the limit to the known universe, the limit to the matter energy barrier 14.5 billion years out from our Big Bang, but we don't know what's beyond there or if there's anything beyond there. Obviously, if the universe is expanding, it's expanding into something. What's it expanding into? Well, there's to make assertions about the unknown like that there must be some hard limit. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about physical space expanding out or looking back. Well, what came before the Big Bang? Well, that may be a nonsensical question.
Exactly.
It may, from a physics standpoint, time as we comprehend it, very well began at the Big Bang, and therefore it's absurd to ask what came before it. And yet we can look at discrete moments in time, and all of us would say that, okay, using our measurement of seconds, we can get back to, some fraction of a second after the Big Bang. But we could say what happened a second beforehand. Well, that puts us in a position of an external transcendent observer looking at time when there may not be time. And for people to claim that because science doesn't currently have an explanation for this, that therefore their transcendent spiritual mind guy serves as an answer is a lie. The God hypothesis has no explanatory value. It is an attempt to explain a mystery with a mystery and nothing more. It is a pacifier that gets people to stop asking questions because they feel like they have an explanation when all they really have is an answer, a stopgap, insertion.
Yeah. So you think basically, because I know what you're saying about this. Maybe time is sort of an illusion. I concur with you there, and perhaps our minds will be able to better grasp it as we evolve more and examine it more, I suppose.
I don't think that it's an illusion in any. I'm not into the kind of subjective, personal views of the universe. There's a reality that we share. It's a matter of perception. We perceive, time passing, discrete events following from each other. There's no reason to think, maybe on some meta level it may be an illusion. Maybe on some meta level the reality that I experience is not accurate. but what we care about is the shared reality. This goes back to what we were talking about with people's arguments from personal experience. I honestly, if God appeared to you and told you a whole bunch of stuff, I couldn't give a damn. It's not part of our shared reality. And when we go to examine our shared reality, it's not a matter of majority opinion or power or anything else. It's a matter of evaluating evidence. And one of the key aspects of that is admitting when we don't know something and we don't understand. And we don't have explanations for prior to the Big Bang or beyond the horizon of the space-time that is our local universe.
Right. Okay, cool. And then quickly moving along, I just wanted to talk about collective consciousness and also how, like, we change atomically, like materially all the time, and we still kind of maintain our identity, though. It seems like it's like, it's not broken. And then I was just going to say how perhaps, there's sort of maybe an organic collective consciousness that might have formed this universal mind, but there's no reason to describe like anthropomorphic human traits to it, but where, for example, like us, we're made up of millions or trillions of cells, but yet we're sort of, as a whole, we're one essential being. So I'm just going to see what you thought about that, like a collective consciousness.
My answer would be, what evidence do you have for such a thing, right?
Right.
You can make an argument that is plausible, right? That if you have a complex enough network, that maybe there's some emergent behavior that will come from this network. So I can kind of buy it up to that point, but there needs to be evidence for this collective unconscious or global consciousness or whatever in order to fully buy into it. You have to have something that you can observe.
Okay.
And I don't even begin to buy into it.
Really?
Not even close. You talk about our identity being persistent, despite the fact that the individual atoms and molecules that make up my brain have changed over years, and none of them are the same as when I started out. It doesn't matter. There has been a continuity of identity that is critical to the label that I put on me, and that is critical to the emergent property of consciousness that comes from my brain. When all of those constituent elements disperse, when I die, when there's no longer any neural electrochemical activity going on, I'm done. There is no me that continues, and we have not identified any sort of consciousness beyond the individual brains that we interact with. So until somebody, it's science fiction until somebody comes up with some reason why it could possibly be true and why we should likely consider it to be true, and then provide evidence that it is most likely true. And we haven't even gotten past the first stage.
So you see it as an emergent property of the network of cells, and then it's a continual process because even though it's changing, you're biologically changing along simultaneously, basically.
Yeah, the definition of me changes. This pen has a whole bunch of different parts to it, but I'm going to call it this pen. And if I remove this little piece of plastic right here, and I get a replacement piece of plastic and put it on here, I'm still going to call it this pen because my definition of this pen has changed to include the new elements that replace the old ones. But there has been a continuity of this pen. This particular item changed, but and for a short period during that change, the definition of this pen excluded that. Now, if I took all of this apart and strung it out along the table, I don't still have this pen. I have the constituent elements of this pen. It has ceased to have the identity, and this is something that we ascribe to it. And this isn't a superb example because we're talking about a clear little physical thing as opposed to in the example that I use all the time, which I blatantly stole from Dennett, is how many molecules of water are required for it to have the property wet. One molecule of water isn't wet.
Right.
Wet is a property that emerges from it. And yet nobody would deny that if I dump a bucket of water on you, you're now wet. You have experienced the wetness.
Right on. So basically, I guess you don't consider consciousness all distinct from the biology then, basically. It's kind of what you're concluding. Okay. These are all good discussions here. And then I guess because there's like as above, so below, as within, so without, and that's kind of, I would say, like the best example I could give would be ourselves, but I see your point.
Yeah.
And then finally, I was going to say, I know a lot of times people talk about, how to kind of talk to these especially like fundamental, say Christians, for example, who are like damning people to hell eternally if they don't buy into their dogmatic descriptions of Jesus and so forth, and basically almost like threaten people with that and so forth. And
it is a threat.
I guess, and one of the things that used to really sort of get under my skin, because it's like I don't even think I'd want to believe in a God that has set up reality
it's meant to get under your skin. It's emotional manipulation is what it is.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's exactly what it is. It's emotionally, and then, emotional manipulation is a good way of putting it. And, they've kind of been, I guess they sort of buy into it, or grew up that way, or for different reasons. They had personal experiences and then ascribe it to, the Bible, the God of the Bible, or the Quran, and so forth.
Well, if you become steeped so much into a religious dogma or whatever, then it becomes the ambient explanation for anything that's out of the ordinary, right? You see people who think that they see visions of the Virgin Mary, right, in car exhaust somewhere.
Condoms.
Or condoms.
That's my new
favorite. That was the latest one, right?
Yeah.
Or on a piece of toast or some silly thing, right? And it's because they're so steeped.
In dog's blood or something like that.
Yeah, they're so steeped in this culture that's almost imprinted on them, like with a sledgehammer. And so, therefore, when they see anything like that, I can remember a spilt ice cream cone in Houston years back that got religious, fervor around it. It's crazy, right? So what you're seeing here is the same sort of thing. If you're so steeped in this religious upbringing, then anything out of the ordinary or anything whatever is explainable via this dogma.
But the threat of hell in particular, the idea of some kind of cosmic justice, even if it's a perversion on what we might consider justice, is appealing. When you add to this the divisive us and them mentality that accompanies religions like Christianity, Islam, etc., what you have is a system where we are the ones that are going to be rewarded. And even if, as in many Christians will say, it's not because we deserve it, but because God has graced us and would perhaps like to grace other people as well. That's how you get to this. It's a caring warning. We don't want you to have to go to hell. So we want to help. Well, wait a minute. What do you mean you don't want me to have to go to? Where did this hell come from?
Yeah.
And where did the rules come from that determine whether or not I go there? And oh, by the way, whether or not you believe that this God created a hell, and whether or not you believe that this God created the rules, if you believe that this God created the universe, did he have some choice in how he created the universe? Because and did he know how it was going to end? Because if he had a choice and he knew, then he knew he was creating a universe where I would be, by the rules, destined for hell.
Exactly.
And that makes him responsible. And if he created the only universe he could possibly create, then why give him any credit? I mean, clearly there is some set of rules for universe creating that transcend this God, and life and existence and the rules are not any kind of gift from this being. It's something that he had to adhere to, which means he's not all powerful, and yet somehow the Christians believe that in either case this God can create a loophole to these rules by coming down and pretending to be human and giving up a weekend.
Interesting. And something else interesting too, I think, is that I think that like different, we'll call them kings and so forth. Like I think through my research, it seems that Yeshua or Jesus the Christ actually taught, if it was a real person and so forth. From my research in the original languages and so forth, was that he, as a human being, actually taught universal reconciliation, and that hell, or the word fire in Greek, actually was per, which stemmed into purify. So it's like God's fire. These are all just words and labels, but was actually like a corrective experience. Like if you keep making the same mistake, eventually you learn from it and move on. That was the original idea of and hell was a word that was inserted later. Originally, it was like 4 other words.
Yeah, I did a whole lecture on the history of hell, where you have Hades, Gehenna, Sheol, etc.
Exactly. Tar.
But
Yes, the meaning does change.
saying that
for
there
many
is
things.
some original intent is
It's like
no
peeling layers of an onion,
offense
right?
to you, but you're engaging in something that I find to be virtually useless, and it's the same sort of thing that people have been engaged in since, for thousands of years, which is, oh, was there somebody, and did they say this, and what did they originally say, and what did that mean? Okay, let's imagine for a second that 2,000 years ago there was somebody who had some message that was actually accurate and of some use. So what? If it's something that we haven't yet discovered or rediscovered, okay, it might be interesting to know, but it would still need to be validated. But the pursuit of attempting to find hidden secret meaning in ancient texts is one that I find just mind-numbingly time-wasting, because it's predicated on the idea that ancient peoples had some insight that we have since lost, and I find that patently absurd.
And it seems like a lot of the different religions, even like a lot of the quotes from like Muhammad and Christ are actually like really similar, and
Well, Islam is a derivative religion from
Yeah.
Judaism and borrowed from Christianity.
It's also derivative in the sense that they were all created by people who were roughly similar, trying to explain similar things under similar circumstances. And it's no surprise at all that the further in time you go back to these ancient books, the more wrong they were about the nature of reality. And as you get closer and closer to the modern era, they begin to have, go ask a Muslim to explain to you how the Quran is absolutely correct in keeping with science, and then do the same thing with an Old Testament advocate and compare the two.
Mm-hmm.
The Quran's going to come out ahead, and both of them look embarrassingly pathetic in comparison to what we actually know. It's the chewing gum fetus nonsense. Well, how could they have known that 700 years ago? Well, I don't know. Maybe women were still having miscarriages 700 years ago, and maybe these people who successfully bred and domesticated animals might have seen underdeveloped fetuses in different animals, and then saw one in the idea. It's like people have this thought that until the day they were born, nobody knew anything.
right.
That everybody who came before them couldn't look around at reality and come to some understanding of it. And yet we are all here standing on the feet or on the heads of those that came before us. But anyway, Jason, I got full lines. I got to let you go.
Okay. And thanks, guys. And I just want to say sometimes people's conclusions, I've talked to Christians and so forth, and I've given them good evidence, but it's almost like they have their conclusions already, and it's tough to they're not really, it totally stifles the readiness to look at the merit of your evidence, or other points of view. It's just I guess egocentric or something.
Well, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Bye.
I haven't finished reading it yet, so I can't possibly recommend it. But I'm reading a book that deals with this issue of
Show it.
not yet.
Okay.
What people believe that they know, and why they believe they know it, and how they can believe things in the face of strong evidence to the contrary. And to just do one quick example from the book is the Challenger experiment, where after the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, a professor had a little over 100 of his students do a handwritten journal entry that he kept, where they described where they were when they found out, what their feelings were, and different specifics about the events. And then 2.5 years later, these same students were interviewed and asked
the same question.
the same questions. And 2.5 years later, they were most of them, 75 to 80% or so, were convinced that their recollection at that time was accurate. And in reality, in comparison, shockingly few, around 10%, were actually accurate. 25% were dramatically different from what they had originally written. And in at least one case, the student was handed his original paper because his current memory of this was so different from his previous memory that he was handed his handwritten previous memory, and he said, yes, that's my handwriting, but that's not what happened. Now,
Yeah, so the point is that you can be sure about something that's false, right?
yeah, and even when I can't imagine much better evidence to be presented. If I had a memory in my head of something that happened, 3 years ago on the show, if I had a memory of a particular conversation and it was vivid, and then somebody said, no, here you go, and then played me back a video clip, there's no way I could say, well, that's me, but that's not what happened. I think that
I think you're being sure of your sureness now.
I realize that we're particularly digging a little catch-22 type thing here, but I think that there are different mentalities, and one thing that's critical is this unflinching adherence to the evidence. I made a conscious decision that I gave a damn about truth, that I wanted to have a view of reality that was demonstrably correct, that I was going to follow evidence where it led instead of leading evidence where I wanted it to go. And therefore, if somebody gave me that video clip, I would have to say, I've been wrong in my recollection this time. Clearly, that's what happened. And I would like to think that most people would do that, but I understand, based on this experiment and several others like it, that there is some segment of the population that would deny that. And it's not just some hardcore schizophrenic who is divorced from reality. Normal people who you wouldn't suspect of anything would say, well, clearly you doctored that footage. There are clips of this show on YouTube that people think we edited. Now, first of all, as a reminder, we don't put clips up on YouTube. Fans of the show go through and find particular segments that they like and they post it. And so there is a clip where I have this conversation with this guy and it's going along relatively well, and then it ends with something like, I'm going to come down there and punch you in the face, or something like that.
Very popular clip for some strange reason.
And we had at least one person claim that's an edited clip, because this person was a clear, good representative of the Christianity that they accepted and was presenting the arguments as they would and was in complete agreement with them. And then this, I'm going to punch you in the face, comes out of nowhere. So she thinks we added that to make this Christian look bad. No, the Christian already looked bad to everybody else. He just began to look bad to you when he said he was going to punch me. So we sent her to the original, unedited, here's the full-length TV show. You can go and watch that segment. And she still was not completely convinced, but was a little less accusational about it. So. We got Stephen from North Carolina. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, I just got this little piece of information I got from a creationist a couple days ago. It's about polonium radio halos.
Yeah.
You heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, about Robert Gentry and his research on finding it from primordial rocks and saying proof of an instant creation.
Well, fill us all in, because I've never heard of this. Sorry.
All right, yeah. Polonium just has a very short half-life, and he says that he's found it in some primordial igneous rocks.
Okay.
And it's just like igneous rocks take a wild form. And
okay. So the polonium shouldn't be there given its half-life, right? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for filling me in. So this is casting doubt on radiometric dating. Is that the goal here, or what's going on?
No, basically, this should be called When Physicists Try to Do Geology. Because Gentry's a physicist and not a geologist, and he doesn't present very good information. He uses samples that people haven't had a good opportunity to verify, using geologic methods to determine the dates of these. And he tries to build his own model of radiometric dating in order to make the universe appear, or make the Earth appear younger than the geologic standards. And one of the huge problems with his particular method that doesn't wash is that in order for it to be true, the half-life, the decay rate for polonium has to have remained constant for this entire time, while every other radioactive element used to have a higher half-life and has since slowed down. And that's what has to happen in order to make his scheme work. That there is this one element that has remained constant while the rest of them have somehow changed. So basically, he's willing to toss out every piece of reliable geological evidence, every piece of evidence that has allowed us to confirm the reliability of radiological dating, except for the one that supports his hypothesis. I know
It sounds like a giant mind game.
There's an article about this on Talk Origins that I'd read before, which I pulled up a few minutes ago. So for those of you who thought I had all that off the top of my head, I hate to shatter your illusions. If you go to talkoRigins.org/FAQS/PO-HALOS/Gentry.html, you can find a thorough article that completely refutes Gentry's polonium halos hypothesis.
And I'm assuming they have like scientific papers on there, right?
Oh yeah, this is
Talk Origins is a great resource for especially creationism claims. One of the things that they have on there is they have this catalog of all the different possible arguments for creationism, and then they have refutations of them. So it's this like giant taxonomy of the arguments back and forth and the evidence for each one. And down at the leaves of these trees are these big, meaty scientific things written by experts, and they'll go through things one by one, and this particular is a great example.
Here's the summary conclusion, just if you don't want to bother with it. Gentry's polonium halo hypothesis for young Earth fails or is inconclusive for all tests. Gentry's entire thesis is built on a compounded set of assumptions. He's unable to demonstrate that concentric halos in mica are caused uniquely by alpha particles resulting from the decay of polonium isotopes. His samples are not from primordial pieces of the Earth's original crust, but from rocks which have been extensively reworked. Finally, his hypothesis cannot accommodate the many alternative lines of evidence that demonstrate a great age for the Earth. Gentry rationalizes any evidence which contradicts his hypothesis by proposing 3 singularities, one-time divine interventions over the past 6,000 years. Basically, in order to make everything work, God started everything 6,000 years ago and then tinkered a couple thousand years later and then tinkered again, is kind of the way this goes. But talkorigins.org is easily the single best resource to go get real scientific information from real experts that refute the nonsensical and often laughable. I mean, this is a claim I'm not qualified to talk about. I'm not a geologist. I have no expertise in this area. And most creationists aren't either. And so this would be a case where if a creationist were here saying, well, what about polonium halos? And I'd say, oh, that's been debunked by these, real scientists, and it doesn't. I can respond to it. But the person sitting out there watching is basically seeing 2 people who don't know what the hell they're talking about. One of them saying, well, this guy says this, and the other one saying, well, this guy says this. And unless they care enough to actually go out and read what real experts have to say about what the science is on this, then they're probably just going to accept a word of whichever one they like better, or whichever one agrees with whatever preconception they've got.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate truth.
And the nature of reality is that none of us can be experts on everything, and we have to rely.
Expertise requires work,
yeah.
Right? And a lot of people don't want to put that in.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of effort to understand these arguments.
So yeah, as a non-expert, I'm going to side with the experts and say that this hypothesis from a non-geologist that doesn't appear to have support and doesn't appear to have any scholarly journals published about it or supporting it is not believable.
Right.
Oh yeah. I agree. I just wanted to hear what you guys have to say on the subject. But I know you guys don't have much time, so I'll go ahead and let you go.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen.
Well,
yeah, we are.
That was frightening, Matt, that you pulled that up. It's pretty scary.
Well, it would have been more scary if I knew it off the top of my head, but I can't know all that stuff off the top. We've got Ben in Oxford.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, am I on?
You're on the air, and you've got
Great.
like 3 minutes.
I'd like to ask. Obviously, the God of the Gap theory is flawed because we never knew everything, and we still don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But how then would you? I've been asked this before. How then would you define miracles? Because miracles are. I've defined before miracles as something which can't be explained at all which can't be explained by science.
I wouldn't use that definition. There are lots of things that can't currently be explained. I would define miracle as something that clearly violates science, the understood physical reality of the way the world works. I mean, it would be a miracle if dead people got up and started walking around. I mean, long dead people crawled up out of their graves and started walking around. I'd call that a miracle. It wouldn't simply be something that's not understood. There's plenty of things that aren't understood.
But how would that? Isn't it possible that that could just be a result of something that we don't understand yet?
Yeah, it very well could be. And I've argued many times before that if something like that were to occur, then it would be our responsibility to investigate it, to attempt to find a naturalistic explanation for it. And our inability to doesn't mean that it is necessarily supernatural in origin, just that we haven't found a natural explanation for it. You really need to be able to eliminate all possibilities other than supernatural, and in that case, you'd almost need confirmed evidence for supernatural in order to be able to do that.
Okay. But then, so I don't understand what kind of evidence would you say would be liable for proof of the existence of God?
Well, there are lots of things that we've come up with in the past that people would say, would be reasonably good evidence of the existence of a God.
Yeah.
First of all, it would depend on the God. Clearly, they, showing up here in the room and announcing who they were, and then providing whatever demonstration of their abilities or powers, whatever it would take to convince, would be enough. I mentioned on the last Nonprofits, for example, if one of my grandfathers, both of whom have been dead for a number of years, were to walk into my room and sit down and say, I'm back for the dead, here's what's happened to me, and I've got a message for you from God, it would be hard for me to dismiss that.
Of course, yeah.
But it isn't conclusive evidence for the claim.
But how could you? How would you be able to distinguish that from an actual divine revelation, other than just hallucinations from some mold in the ceiling?
I wouldn't. It's not my responsibility to distinguish it from a divine revelation. It's the responsibility of those asserting that it is divine revelation to prove their case. And on that note, we got like 30 seconds left, so I got to let you go. I apologize,
Okay.
Ben. You can call back next week. I appreciate it. We're going to Thread Guilds after the show's over. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down and join us. You don't have to be a member to attend. There's the opening credits. There was a list of people behind the scenes who can show themselves for all the hard work that they've done. We'll be back again next week. We hope everybody enjoyed their holiday season. And next week is next year. So we'll see you then. Bye-bye.